advancing and they're getting things moving forward, because the biggest complaint I think that most of us have is it's rarely with the policies of the Republican Party so much, or, the new Republican American First MAGA movement. It's usually the fact that we can't really get stuff done. And, the American people fight so hard and work so hard to get us to a point where we've got, the majority in Congress, we've got the majority in the Senate, we've got the White House, and then people are left sitting there going, yeah, guys, what are we doing? Like, is anything moving forward? So it's always nice, I think, to show the American people that, we are capable occasionally of getting things to President Trump's desk. On the other hand, I think we've got to, be cognizant of practicing what we preach from time to time, because we've been very critical of omnibus bills and these big bloated bills in Congress and stuff. And look, no one can market and package something better than President Trump. We know that. But I think let's be a little bit consistent here too, because I think we want to be advancing bills that are, digestible, manageable, and that we're not cramming too many things in one thing. But bottom line, I think it's always good when we're actually moving something forward. So I'll take the win.
Yeah, and I love the fact that you bring up that point, because procedurally, I have a huge problem with these big omnibus bills, but I don't blame President Trump or even conservatives in Congress for trying to make it happen this way. What I really blame is the voters. Like, if the voters would hold their elected officials accountable for things, they wouldn't be able to get this stuff through. I'm glad it's through. There's a lot of great stuff in that bill, and if you want to really a deep dive, go watch the Charlie Kirk show. He's got a much better breakdown than we're going to have here. But I did want to talk about this. I think this is really interesting, and I'd love your thoughts on this. The New York Times said that this exposed the deep divide amongst conservatives, which I don't know if that's a hit, right? Like, good that we can get together and vote on something, but at the same time, that's kind of the whole point of conservatism. You have disagreements, and you're allowed to have disagreements, and we sort it out together, and we eventually pass the big, beautiful bill and put it on President Trump's desk. The left doesn't have anything. It's lockstep all the time, and you can't deviate at all. And if you do, you're a bigot, racist, fascist, whatever. But conservatives have disagreements. What are your thoughts there on just the broad scopes of conservatives being able to talk things out, hash things out in a reasonable way, and eventually come to an agreement on something?
Well, to me, okay, look, you're talking to somebody who thinks it's really healthy for people to disagree and to articulate those disagreements. And I think a second ago, you might have even used the word civilly or something like that. Look, I don't even think we need to worry that much about being civil. Like, politics is messy. It's ugly, and look, it's not a bad thing for people to be really passionate about their positions and to feel very, very strongly. I mean, we're grown people, and look, no one survives in politics without a thick skin. Okay, so let's get rid of this idea that, we can't get too impassioned or inflamed, or we can't raise our voices, or we can't, I personally think and I've sat back. Let me tell you, if we switch gears just for a second, we talked about, say, Israel, Palestine, and, what just happened with us striking Iran, right? Mm-hmm. There was a lot of divide within the conservative movement about what the right thing to do there was. It's an incredibly complicated issue. I took a step back and I listened to people on both sides of the argument who I respect immensely, who had very impassioned, very, felt very, very strongly about what they were saying on diametrically opposite sides. And I learned a lot by just watching those interactions take place. I don't think it's a bad thing for us to argue and disagree. And as far as what the New York Times is pushing and their whole narrative on all this, it's an interesting thing. I mean, there have been several splits. Like, even if we were just to say the MAGA movement, not just the Republican Party at large, but even within MAGA, there have been a number of different splits and arguments that have happened over the last 3 or 4 months. And it's an interesting take that the liberal media is giving recently, because if you remember, for years, they said we were in a cult. They said that we were all just they said that we were all just a bunch of mindless drones who walk in lockstep and follow the party narrative and all this stuff. And now all they're reporting on is, oh, look at all these people with all their own opinions and they're arguing with each other. It's like, Yeah, that's what we are. We're intelligent people who don't all agree. Most of us are pretty strong-willed people. That's why we've survived in politics for years, because you have to be to survive. And it's not a bad thing to disagree. And in fact, you can learn a lot. I just did recently by staying out of some of these arguments and just listening.
That's a great point. Yeah, are we in a cult or do we disagree on everything? You can't be both, because it just doesn't pan out that way. So to move on from this, like I said, go listen to the Charlie Kirk Show or any of the other fantastic RAV TV shows that will explain this in much greater detail than we have time to here. I want to move on to this because I think this is important. Jobs numbers came out. Job numbers are steady. U.S. added 147,000 jobs in June, surpassing economics expectations of 110,000. So pretty above expectations, which is good. The only thing that I think is really interesting here that concerns me a little bit is the unemployment rate is down, but unemployment doesn't factor in people who just aren't looking for work. And the labor participation rate is down to 62.3%, which is the lowest it's been since 2022. What do we have to do as a country and as a government to not have so many people just choosing, we're just not going to participate? The jobs numbers are good, but I don't like people seeing just sitting on their butts and getting government money, my money, to do nothing.
Well, honestly, I think it's complicated, because obviously the knee-jerk reaction is to say that, we've got a lot of people in this country that are dependent on government programs. And once you get dependent on, government programs or subsidies or, help of some kind, it's really hard to get off that. I mean, not just hard in terms of like spiritually, emotionally. I mean, people, I think, lose their self-confidence. They lose their desire and their will to actually take control of their lives. But in addition to that, like, that's just one group of people. I do believe that. I don't think that's everybody. I think there are a lot of people in this country who have a lot of dreams. I think that they have the will to work, but times are still very, very tough in this country. I mean, if you look just at the housing market today compared to what it was in the 90s or the 80s or the 70s, I mean, you could make a reasonable wage back in those decades and the American dream was still attainable to you. You knew that you could, be a middle class person. You could afford a nice house. You could have one person in the household working, the other person staying home raising children. And it was a really nice life. That's not the reality for people anymore. And, I mean, I think until we get that fixed somehow, and I'm not going to say and pretend like I have all the answers, but I mean, I think that's a really serious part of this. People are going, why am I going to go out there and pursue something that feels so unattainable to me? And I think it's complex. I think there's a lot of problems that we have to fix before people feel motivated to go out there and chase their dreams the way that they used to.
I like your point of kind of the just the mentality that has to be there, and kind of the devastation mentally and internally as outside of the economic point. That's why we call this show charting the course of America's cultural comeback, because it's culture. It's not necessarily just economics or just policy. Culture as a whole encompasses kind of all of this. Speaking of this jobs numbers too, and we won't get into too big of the weeds here. I just thought this was a fascinating headline. The same month, this is according to the Unusual Whales, that Microsoft laid off 2,300 workers in the state of Washington. They also applied for 6,300 HB1 visas in that same state. This seems to be exactly the opposite of what we are trying to accomplish as the American people. Try to get jobs here, keep manufacturing, as much manufacturing as possible here, but just have jobs in the United States. But Microsoft laying off a bunch of people, and this is just one of their many rounds, at the same time applying for foreign workers to come in and do that same job for cheaper. What do we do to combat this sort of stuff?
Well, it's almost the same, I'd say, answer as before. I mean, first of all, we have to be motivating these our own people, I think, to become well-educated, well-skilled, and have a desire to succeed in these fields. And I do think that, there are certain areas in which we have real differentials in terms of enough skilled people to fill these positions. So there is some legitimacy to that, too. But on the other hand, if we're allowing these major corporations to go out and find skilled labor that will work at a fraction of what we're paying American workers, well, then that's a problem too, because obviously we need to be prioritizing pay. But again, this goes back to what we were just talking about. Yeah. I mean, if you are a skilled American worker with a dream, but that there's somebody overseas who can come in and do your job for maybe half the pay, and that corporations are going to give preferential treatment to those people, that kind of demoralizes people from wanting to get into the workforce.
Yeah, and it's complex, but at the same time, there's some of these broad strokes things that kind of seem pretty rudimentary and be able to figure out at the government level, hopefully. Brandon Strauch will be back after the break. Actually, we're changing things up a little bit. Stephen Gardner will be back right after this particular break to talk about USAID and the hanky-panky going on there. And then we'll go back to Brandon to discuss the SCOTUS taking up a really important argument in their next session. Don't go away. We'll be right back after the break.
Got to admire what you've been able to do, not to weaponize, but to organize on these college campuses.
At Turning Point USA, we've spent 13 years building the machine, and last year we saw it pay off. Our grassroots army is making a real difference. Help us keep the momentum going. Donate today and keep TPUSA strong on campuses across America.
And for a gift of any amount, you'll receive your Big Gov Sucks Cooler. Claim yours today.
Student Action Summit 2025, featuring the boldest voices in the fight. Secretary Pete Hegseth, Charlie Kirk, Tucker Carlson, Steve Bannon, Brett Cooper, Secretary Kristi Noem, Riley Gaines, Brandon Tatum, Jack Posobiec, and more. Join thousands of students, future leaders, and freedom fighters. This is the battleground of ideas. This is the Student Action Summit. The future is ours to build. Register now at SAS2025.com.
It will be functional, it will be auditable, we will know where it's going, and we will see results.
So, Stephen, big statistic there. 90% of USAID money was not getting to its end user, which is the whole point of aid. What are your thoughts about this, especially with how much heat the administration has gotten over wanting to make it run more efficiently?
You know, I hate that Donald Trump and Elon Musk are fighting, but one of the babies that came out of that relationship was Doge cleaning up USAID. 90% of the money that they take out of our paycheck for USAID wasn't even arriving. Like, imagine if 90% of missiles weren't arriving in Ukraine, 90% of cash, 90% of tanks, right? But the reason that nobody seemed to care or make a peep about it publicly is because it was going to Democrat family members, their wife, their daughter, their brother-in-law, their son. Somebody was getting more and more money. And, you know, this is probably why they kept trying to bump that up, not so that they could do more good around the globe, but so that they could have a secret pay raise in order to survive the Biden inflation that hit the middle class so difficult. So I think it's great. I say shut it down. There's better ways to spend my hard-earned tax money. I'm happy about it.
You know, on top of that, too, you've seen clips from around the world. We've even played some on this show. I'm going to get the country wrong. It might have been Kenya, but one of those sub-Saharan African countries where the leader of the country, people were talking about, oh, USAID is going away. We're screwed. The leader of the country said, why? Just make it happen for yourself. Do all the things that you need to do to make sure you keep your family afloat. This shouldn't be that big of a problem. I mean, what do you say to the people around the world that are screaming about this, that also, I don't know, not to, you know, belittle the problems that other people have around the world, but, you know, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, make something happen for yourself, and maybe you won't need U.S. taxpayer dollars.
I mean, they've obviously, like a drug addict, they've become addicted to that money. Even though it was only 10% that was arriving, that 10%, they were counting on it. They got accustomed to it. It's like if all of a sudden Christmas just got canceled. Oh, you know what? There was no Jesus, no more Christmas for the rest of our lives. That is cut off. No presents, no family tradition. You would go, wait, what is going on? I've had this my entire life. So I'm sure that there is frustration, there is sadness, but like this African leader said, it wasn't your money to begin with. So you're going to have to now figure it out. But there's been so many lies around USAID. Now you've got former President George Bush teaming up with former President Barack Obama to publicly shame Donald Trump, saying, you will be held accountable for the death of hundreds of thousands of people around the world. Like, really? That 90% of that money wasn't even arriving. So how about the millions of people that could have been saved if the other 90% arrived? I don't know why George Bush, when he does decide to come out of retirement, it's always to shame Donald Trump and never to do anything good for the Republican base.
Yeah, I've never understood that either, and you have so many different variables here, especially too. I think people, when they see those numbers, right, how much money gets into USAID, they put it in the context of what that money can buy in American dollars on American soil, when in reality it doesn't actually take all that much money if used efficiently to make some big dents around the world. But for some reason we have it contextualized in our head that, okay, well, this wouldn't go anywhere if we sent it to Detroit. It would be all gone in a heartbeat. Okay, well, money goes further in other parts of the world. Speaking of other parts of the world, I thought this was really interesting and kind of a feel-good story. We're going into a holiday weekend. People are celebrating No Kings. There was a Disney cruise in which a poor young girl fell off the boat. And usually it's horrifying, but that is a death sentence. People forget that the ocean is big and vast. And when people fall off cruise ships, it is an extremely dangerous situation where they rarely find people. This dad jumped off the cruise ship and ended up saving his daughter. I think this is a great story overall. Just not even in the specifics of it, but just the overall 30,000 foot view. This is what a parent would do for their kid. What are your thoughts?
Oh, I think it's such a beautiful story. It could have gone wrong. We could have been covering the death of this 5-year-old girl. I guess the father had put her up in order to take a picture. She fell backwards into the ocean. And literally that part of you that loves your child more than anything on planet Earth was like, I've got to jump in right now or this child is dead. And so without even thinking, he just jumps in and immediately starts looking for her. Gratefully, other people started screaming and yelling and pointing. The Disney crew, because they had practiced this so many times, they were able to get out and rescue them within 20 minutes. It's a total feel-good story that totally could have gone wrong. But yes, this guy is a hero. I would have done the same thing. I was talking about this while fishing with a friend of mine. And he said, dude, I would have been in the water immediately. I said, I might have looked for a dinghy or a lifesaver for 5 seconds, but I would have been in that water. There's no way I would let my child die alone or die at all. I would do everything I could to save my child.
Yeah, and I think with the current political climate around fathers specifically, I think this is a great example of just how important, not again from a physical safety standpoint specifically and only, but just in general, how important father figures are around the world and especially to young kids. This is completely apropos of nothing, and maybe be I wouldn't say tawdry because it's fine. It's just it's funny. It's funny to see people you like dunk on people that you don't like. I'm gonna read this tweet. I call everything a tweet. I know it's a truth post, or I get it. That's how my brain works. Donald Trump dunking on Jamie Raskin. He's talking about the bills and all that sort of stuff. But I think the real funny part is here when he says, he's been consistently losing to me for years, and I love watching his ugly face as he's forced to consistently concede defeat to Trump. I'm sorry, I can't stop laughing at this. Like, is that the most presidential thing to say? Have other presidents mouthed off like this? Probably not, but I think it's kind of funny. What are your thoughts?
I mean, the only other one I've ever heard of is, Richard Nixon on tape in the Oval Office. But Donald Trump has been at odds with Jamie Raskins. He really is a loser of a politician. He doesn't really get a lot done. However, he led the charge on the 2 stupid, wasteful impeachment processes against President Trump. And he's a bad member of Congress. He doesn't really get a lot done. Now, should Trump do this? Nah, it's probably not presidential, but is Donald Trump going to do this? Absolutely. Like this is a New Yorker who is not going to put up with this guy, making his life difficult. So I think it's great. And you know what? Jamie Raskins is not the best looking guy. So at least he was truthful about that.
I was going to say, as you were talking and the B-roll was rolling through, I can confidently say, fact check true, ugly face. Now, whether or not that's how you should judge your politicians, maybe you should throw some policy and ideology in there. But also, again, fact check true, Jamie Raskin, ugly face. Stephen Gardner, host of the Stephen Gardner Show on YouTube. Thanks so much for joining us. Really appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Coming up next here on Turning Point tonight, we'll go back to Brandon Strzok to talk about some other stories that I think you're going to find fascinating and possibly even hilarious. Don't go away. We'll be right back after the break.
Got to admire what you've been able to do, not to weaponize, but to organize on these college campuses.
At Turning Point USA, we've spent 13 years building the machine, and last year we saw it pay off. Our grassroots army is making a real difference. Help us keep the momentum going. Donate today and keep TPUSA strong on campuses across America.
And for a gift of any amount, you'll receive your Big Gov Sucks Cooler. Claim yours today.
Welcome back to Turning Point Tonight, where together we are charting the course of America's cultural comeback. My name is Joe Bob. Thanks so much for sticking with us through the break. You know, a lot of us often ask, when is there going to be a definitive answer on X or this or that or the other thing? Because there's so many things in flux right now, so many crazy things taking on in the world, that you want some sort of stability. Well, finally, one of the biggest things that I think a lot of us conservatives have been looking at as crazy and chaotic is getting a look at the Supreme Court. Let's bring back our guest, Brandon Straka, founder of the Walkaway Movement. Brandon, the Supreme Court decided today that they are going to take on the transgender in sports, specifically with laws coming out of Idaho and West Virginia that have banned transgender athletes, specifically males to females, competing in women's sports. Do you think, say they set a precedent here that, hey, you can't do that. Do you think other states will kind of start to get the message? Because at the end of the day, all they're going to be deciding is whether or not the states can do it. That doesn't force California or New York or any of these other super deep blue states to do anything about it, but it does set the precedent, hey, you can. How much of a difference do you think this makes, assuming this goes the right way? And also, you know, what do you think the outcome looks like from a fairness perspective here going to the Supreme Court?
I think what will happen is, if the Supreme Court decides that states have the right to say that biological sex determines who's allowed to enter into various sports programs and fields, more moderate states, I think, are going to start drawing a clear line that biological sex will determine who's allowed to enter. But I think that massively liberal states like California, New York, others in the Northeast and around the country are going to really take on this cause. I mean, I think that for whatever reason, they see this much the same way they saw the gay marriage battle, that this is somehow like a legitimate civil rights issue for them. But it's very, very different. It's really ridiculous. And look, no matter where you stand, I think on the spectrum of transgender rights, you know, I'm somebody, most people know I'm a former liberal. My entire adult life, I've known people who identify as transgender. I am not against transgender people. In fact, I would call myself an advocate for transgender people. However, you can be an advocate for transgender people and still acknowledge that biological sex is a reality, and that it is fundamentally unfair for somebody who is born biologically male to compete against people who are born biologically female. It just simply is not fair. And I believe in my gut that the Supreme Court will lean in that direction when they make their decision. But sadly, I think that there are a lot of ultra liberal states around the country who are going to continue to see this as somehow a civil rights cause for transgender people, when in fact it's really about fairness, and this is not fair.
Yeah, I totally agree with that Supreme Court analysis. Also interesting, the little cognitive dissonance there that we were talking about in the last segment. Hey, myriad of opinions here, and we like to have these discussions and go back and forth, especially around the trans issue. But yeah, that the Supreme Court issue will be really, really interesting to see. Speaking of stuff that there's no good transition for this. I just think it's very, very funny. Joy Reid for some reason is still talking about things, and she had one of our favorite libs to make fun of on her podcast, which there's so many people that emailed the show saying, don't give these people a platform, don't talk about them. I think we have to, because it's just so funny and ridiculous. They deserve mockery. Let me play you this clip, and I want to get your reaction right after. Watch this.
And I don't say this lightly, but our country needs to be sanctioned. We are the bad guys on the world stage. We are a menace to not only free people everywhere, but we are a menace to peaceful people everywhere at this point. And I'm not even going to say that we've only been a menace for the past 3 or 4 months, right? Like, when does the international community decide that enough is enough? I know we're rich. I know we've got a lot of money. I know that people want to buy things from our country because we're rich.
I've heard enough of this. That's Ellie Mistel saying, yeah, we're the bad guys on the world stage. Everything we do is terrible. We need to be sanctioned. To which my question, first of all, is, by who? Like, not even discounting the entirety of the other stupid argument. Okay, fine. Let's accept your dumb premise, which I think is wrong. Who in the world is, I don't know, Namibia going to come in and sanction the United States? Oh no, we might lose our trade partners in sub-Saharan Africa. I don't know, Brandon, what's going on here? I guess at a certain level, like, there has to be, who's watching this show?
Well, first of all, I want to thank you for telling me who that person was, because at first I thought it was Tyler Perry playing one of his characters. Like, that looks like a character from Medea. I don't know if that's a real person or not. I don't know what's going on. Anyway, it doesn't matter. But no, I agree with you. I think maybe what they want is to, like, almost do like a United Nations meeting where people from around the world gather together and they just go like this to us, just this shame. No, I mean, look, America, no matter what issue we're talking about, I mean, we live in a country where we take in more immigrants than any other country. Americans are known for being more generous than most other countries. I mean, the idea that we're such terrible people who have to always constantly feel bad about ourselves and always constantly feel like we're not doing enough. And I don't even know what issue he was all up in arms about. To your point, they wake up angry. Who knows? But I think that liberals need to remind themselves that, you know, even when big bad Republicans are in office, our country, if you look at just about every possible metric, we're more generous, we're more open, we're more giving, we take in more immigrants, we do more for other nations, we provide more aid. So the idea that all these countries that do less than we do, that provide less aid than we do, they take more or less immigrants than we do, are going to sanction us and shame us and, you know, wag their fingers at us. What a joke. You know, everything these people say is a joke.
I think the video, when I first saw that video on X, somebody had captioned it like, President Trump will never recover from this massive blast. Because, you know, how can we as conservatives recover from such a mean-spirited comment? This is just objectively wrong. America is objectively the best country that's ever existed. And to argue that is to say, hey, I don't really know things about the world or history or anything of that sort. You know, in wrapping up here, it is 4th of July tomorrow. We appreciate you sticking around. I know most people have taken off on vacation so far, but appreciate you being here. In general, this is the last day some Americans will have with all of their fingers. Would you like to issue a fair warning to people out there? We've seen so many people lighting fireworks and all the riots out there. I don't know, maybe some common sense wisdom for how to celebrate the actual No King's Day. What are you going to be doing? How should other people celebrate?
I don't know that I'm the person to give common sense advice or good advice to anybody if people look at my track record. But I will say this. Last night, I'm visiting my parents right now. I'm in my parents' home. We invited over relatives last night. I went absolutely hog wild, crazy buying fireworks. I mean, like crazy, like more than I've ever bought in my entire life. And I really justified it, Joe Bob, by saying, you know what, this is the first 4th of July in years that we have a president in office that I feel good about, that I feel like America is on the right track. And for anybody who's followed my story for the last, 4 years, but beyond that 7 years, you know that I went through a very difficult time for 4 years. And I kicked off this year with a presidential pardon from President Trump after being targeted heavily by the Biden administration for 4 years. So I wanted to do it up. So I went out and bought like commercial grade fireworks and had people over. And I mean, we had a massive demonstration outside the Strzok Ranch last night. And it was really spectacular. I mean, I couldn't believe, it was literally like a real fireworks show. So I just want to encourage people, do it up, do it. Go out there, blow your fingers off, blow your hands off, and because America is worth it. America is worth losing your limbs for. So you know what? Just do it.
Just note that the show does not necessarily condone people losing limbs over the celebration of America, but I understand the sentiment. I get the point. Have a great 4th of July. Brandon Strzok, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate you taking the time.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Coming up, we've got some fascinating and funny videos that you're not going to want to miss from around the internet. Don't go away. We'll be right back after the break.
They said Gen Z would stay silent. that we'd back down, that we'd forget what's worth fighting for. But this generation remembers. We remember truth. We remember freedom. And now, we rise. This is more than a conference. It's a call to action, to reclaim the future, to ignite a movement that cannot be ignored. Student Action Summit 2025, featuring the boldest voices in the fight.
Charlie Kirk,
Secretary Pete Hegseth, Tucker Carlson, Steve Bannon, Brett Cooper, Secretary Kristi Noem, Riley Gaines, Brandon Tatum, Jack Posobiec, and more. Join thousands of students, future leaders, and freedom fighters. Raise your voice and take action. This is the battleground of ideas. This is the Student Action Summit. The future is ours to build. Register now at SAS2025.com. featuring the boldest voices in the fight.
Secretary Pete Hegseth,
Charlie Kirk, Tucker Carlson, Steve Bannon, Brett Cooper, Secretary Kristi Noem, Riley Gaines, Brandon Tatum, Jack Posobiec, and more. Join thousands of students, future leaders, and freedom fighters. This is the battleground of ideas. This is the Student Action Summit. The future is ours to build. Register now at SAS2025.com.
Welcome back to Turning Point Tonight. SAS2025.com is where you need to go to snag some tickets. I think they're $20 now for the 4th of July. We're celebrating No Kings here on the 4th of July. $20 tickets. You heard it here first and probably only. SAS sas2025.com, sas2025.com. You can also go to tpusa.com, find out anything Turning Point is doing, the fantastic events around the country, the college campus tours, the academy, the faith department. There's so many things going on at Turning Point. tpusa.com is where you need to go to find out all of that information. And, you can come say hi at SAS if you're going to be there 2025. Let's see, next Friday, Saturday and Sunday, July 11th through the 13th in Tampa, Florida. Don't be a stranger. Come say hello. We love seeing all of you. You can also email the show anytime you want, tpt@tpusa.com. You can email whether you agree or whether you're wrong. We love all of the emails that come in, including the critical ones, since we take those in critically. Glenn reads, again, every single line of every single email. tpt@tpusa.com. Without further ado, there's some funny clips from the internet that I thought I'd bring to you. This is satire, but it's hard to tell. Actually, it's not hard. You can tell it's a skit because of the way it's set up, but at the same time, I'm not entirely sure how much it deviates from the reality. Watch this and we'll discuss. Check it out.
Lo siento.
What?
I'm sorry.
For what?
The raids. They're looking for you.
Lily, I was born here.
What about your family?
They're illegal too.
All of them?
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
Even your cousins?
Oh my God, yes.
I just don't believe it.
I feel like I have gotten that sort of stuff, not necessarily in real life, but definitely like on the internet. People are like, oh, the Trump administration's going to get you. Or like, good luck. Like, I got everybody I know is here legally. I don't have any illegal family members, so yeah, good luck with that one. And they're like, well, they'll still get you. I'm like, all right, well, that's just racism at this point. You're just being racist. Like, America is a country built on ideas. We don't care about your skin color. And if you're here legally, great. If you're not here legally, get out. That's the whole point. I don't know. Again, that is satire. That is a sketch. It is a skit. It's funny. But I don't know how entirely far off it is from the real interactions that other people have, especially the ones I see on the internet. I don't want to talk about comment sections because I recognize that's boring, but just very briefly, I get so many comments of just like, watch out, you're next. Like, all right, cool. If that's the way you think. Actually, that is the real problem. The fact that people believe that sort of thing. We played that commercial a couple weeks ago. There was an actual lib commercial saying, I'm your Republican congressman and I'm going to deport citizens. Like, okay, if you think that that's actually happening, I don't know what to tell you. You're a crazy person. Get some mental help or just do a quick Google search on whether or not that's possible, happening, or even possible to happen. You get so fed up with all the crazy woke stuff, almost as fed up as this next clip. We bleeped it for you. Viewer discretion is advised. This is only like 5 seconds, but this guy is the epitome of so many people, so many of my friends, people that I love, and his thoughts on the open-mindedness of the kids these days. Watch this.
You know what's crazy? These kids today want you to have an open mind about they doing. That. My mind closed. I got a closed mind. Don't ask me to open.
Amen, brother. Yeah, yes. My mind is closed. I'm not open minded. Just have an open mind about these things that are ruining society and culture and a detriment to the entire existence of the American idea. I'll have an open mind. No. My mind is closed. You can't make me open it. That being said, really appreciate you sticking around, tuning in. If you haven't already, again, go get your tickets to the Student Action Summit, sas2025.com. Tickets are still available and only $20 in celebration of no kings on the 4th of July. Again, it worked. We don't have any kings, and that is a fantastic sign. SAS is one of my favorite events. You will see us, the entire Turning Point Tonight team there. We've got a booth. Say hi, come up and say hello. We love seeing all you folks out there. We appreciate you watching every single night. Again, sas2025.com, $20 tickets. Don't miss out. And again, you can also there's a free cooler available too if you want to donate to Turning Point USA. If you haven't seen that ad running, any donation gets you a free cooler. There's so many incentives. There's so many incentives to support, in my opinion, the best conservative organization out there. So either of those two ways, we would love to see you. Have a happy 4th of July. Eat too much, set off too many fireworks. Don't blow your fingers off. Nobody wants to see that. But unfortunately, my warning will not be heeded around the country. If we're speaking realistically, this is the last day, July 3rd, that some people in this country will have all 10 fingers. And that's too bad. But at the same time, this is when we celebrate No Kings. This is the actual No Kings protest, 4th of July. Have a happy 4th. Have a great weekend. Spend it with some family. Spend some good times with people that you love. We will be back Monday, same time, same place. See you then. Charlie's going to take us out. God bless America.
Tomorrow is Independence Day, and it looks as if we are going to have a wonderful Independence Day in this country. As you can see in the picture-in-picture, we have Hakeem the Dream Jeffries going on. He's doing some sort of House equivalent of a filibuster. It's not going to work. The House of Representatives worked long through the night to officially pass the rule, and the final vote should be coming up today to pass the big, beautiful bill. And here's what's so amazing about what Hakeem the Dream is doing, is that there are so many elements of the bill that I forgot about. I'm learning so much about this bill thanks to Hakeem. So you see, having our enemies recite the bill back to us about all the terrible thing that it's going to do for deportations and Planned Parenthood, I'm like, my goodness, this is much better than I realized. I mean, I knew that it was pretty good. I knew that it was about 80 to 90% of the pie, but now I'm getting up to that 95% figure. Late last night, around 1 a.m. Eastern, I was on the phone with members of Congress, some of the holdouts. I said, guys, what are you doing here? I said, it's 1 a.m. Eastern. Thankfully, I have West Coast advantage. This is one of the great things about being on Pacific time, is that being 3 hours behind, it's like only 10 p.m., which is a little past my bedtime. But I stayed up a little bit later to try to help however I could contribute to the fight. And I was talking to some of the holdouts. I said, look, guys, I'm fans of all of you. I'm a fiscal hawk. We need to balance our budget. But what is the concern here? Because if you guys change this bill, and it goes back to the Senate. It very well might die in the halls of Lisa Murkowski and Susan Collins. So what is the objection here? And finally, we got to a place where they said, well, we're going to go vote for it. We need to try to just get some horse trading done. I said, fine, there's no issue with that. And that's exactly what ended up happening late into the evening. And now Hakeem, he's getting a little upset. Hakeem is now doing a nonstop type filibuster, but honestly, he's doing the PR for all of us. He is now our public relations official. He is going element by element of the bill, bragging about how it's going to be the largest deportation army the country has ever seen, talking about how this is going to cut taxes for working people, no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, no tax on Social Security, the largest working class tax cut in American history. The border will be completely and totally fortified. We're going to have a golden dome. Remember the Trump baby accounts, the baby bonus accounts for investment accounts. Every new baby born will get a $1,000 investment account, one-way drop box that will not be able to be accessed by anybody and not accessed till they're 18 years old. And billionaires, financiers, aunts, uncles, moms, dads, grandfathers, schools, competitions, sporting teams can contribute into that investment account, and it will grow throughout their life so that we are creating an economy of owners. And then one thing that I'm extremely passionate about. Republicans have long talked about defunding Planned Parenthood. But guess what? It's happening. Planned Parenthood is getting their funding shut. It's only for a year, but it's still a victory. It's only for a year. But that still is going to completely derail the funding mechanism of Planned Parenthood. And we need to make sure that this is a continually thing. Planned Parenthood is a Democrat super PAC. Regardless of your opinions on abortion, they ran ads against Donald Trump. They engage in political advocacy against Republicans. We are financing a multi-hundred-million-dollar Democrat super PAC. Not to mention they lie about all of the health care nonsense. They're an extension of the DNC. Period. Hard stop. Play cut 435, Hakeem the Dream. He is very upset about the cutting of Planned Parenthood. Play cut 435.
All-out assault on the care, Mr. Speaker, being provided by Planned Parenthood. The medical care being provided by Planned Parenthood.
He is dollar store Obama. I'll tell you what, this guy, you could buy him at a discount. He's not even good at this. Another tweet this morning from a guy by the name of Ian Bremer. I don't know really where he's from, but his tweets get a lot of attention. It's phenomenal. How big of a deal is the ICE investment? The big, beautiful bill passing would make the budget for ICE larger than most of the world's militaries. ICE will be a larger standing army of, as far as budget, than the Israeli military, than the Italian military, than the Dutch military, and the Brazilian military. Let me just comment on something. If Israel only spends $30 billion in their military and they're able to get that kind of precision, they're much more efficient with the money that they spend than we spend $1 trillion. I'm just saying. Anyway, that's a whole side note. I'm kind of impressed that Israel only spends $30 billion a year on their military compared to what America spends. We spend $1 trillion and we got a lot of waste there, but we're going to fix that at a different juncture. ICE will now be one of the largest standing military forces in the world. And if that bothers you, then you are probably an illegal alien. If that bothers you, you're probably harboring illegal aliens. If that bothers you, you're probably employing illegal aliens. You probably run a restaurant, a farm, a meatpacking facility. You probably employ those that should not be here, and you are breaking federal law, and your employees are breaking federal law. 8 U.S.C. 1312, 8 U.S.C. 1350, harboring illegal aliens, not notifying the government of where you are, why you are here. And now ICE will finally have the thrust, it will have the gusto to be able to reverse the invasion. Do you understand how hard it is to reverse a domestic invasion? We are embarking on one of the most difficult, challenging, ambitious, and daunting domestic policy projects in American history. Forget the Hoover Dam, forget going to the moon, forget the atom bomb, the Manhattan Project. This is far more daunting. You are talking about removing human beings that Democrats have allowed to attach themselves to the social welfare state. This is one of the most daunting and ambitious public policy projects in the history of the country. And we're going to get it done. Here is Dollar Store Obama, 437, saying a deportation machine will be unleashed on steroids. You better believe it. This is what we voted for. This is what we need. This, again, of all the major accomplishments that America should be proud of, Panama Canal, Louisiana Purchase, Hoover Dam, the highway system, this is going to go up there. When we are done and we have Project 10 million, and we could say that we removed 10 million people from the country plus self-deportations, it will go down as one of the most remarkable and significant projects in history.
Charlie Kirk Show starts now.
The June jobs report just released, and it shows the U.S. added 147,000 jobs last month. That is stronger than expected. Revisions to April and May reports also show 16,000 more jobs created than previously reported, and the unemployment rate unexpectedly falling to 4.1%.
Well, what do you say to your governor and fellow Michiganders who may lose their health insurance as a result of this bill?
Yeah, what I say is don't let the facts get in the way of a good story, Gretchen. Let's take a look at the facts. Is we expanded Medicaid, right? If you are able-bodied, Medicaid was never put in place to be a long-term solution for able-bodied people to work.
We'll wait on pins and needles for Hakeem Jeffries to finish bloviating. I mean, I think I love it just because they're proving who they are. You know, I mean, how can you be opposed to, extending the Trump tax cuts and providing no tax on overtime and no tax on Social Security? I mean, these are all things everyone should wish for. So the fact that he's spending 3 hours, excoriating the bill is kind of good from the standpoint of the midterms.
Look, this jobs market is like the Energizer Bunny. Every single time we expect it to run out of steam, it just keeps going and going. So these new numbers show that the U.S. economy added 147,000 jobs in June. That was well ahead of the expectation of about 118,000, well ahead of some whispers that we heard on Wall Street of a sub 100,000 number. So this is indeed beating expectations. We were also expecting a slowdown. We did not get that. This is basically in line with May, which was revised higher. It's also good news. The unemployment rate was expected to go up. It didn't. It went down.